A machine read words no human could ever understand. It found them on a stone tablet buried for thousands of years. The AI did not just translate the words. It found something hidden inside them, something the scientists did not expect. And when they saw what it meant, one researcher stopped talking. He just stared at the screen. This is the story of what the machine found. In a quiet lab, far from any camera, a team of scientists turned on a new kind of computer program. It was not built to chat. It was not built to write poems. It was built for one job only: read the languages that humans gave up on long ago. For centuries, some ancient scripts sat in museum drawers, untouched. Scholars tried and failed. Symbols carved into clay, stone, and burned paper stayed silent. No dictionary existed. No key had ever been found. These were languages without a bridge back to the present. Then artificial intelligence changed the rules. Instead of guessing symbol by symbol, the new systems looked for patterns. They scanned thousands of examples at once. They compared shapes, spacing, and rhythm. They found connections a human eye would take a lifetime to see. In just weeks, a machine could do what generations of scholars could not. Researchers were careful at first. They tested the AI on scripts that were already solved. They wanted to see if the machine's answers matched what humans already knew. And they did. The system was not guessing. It was reading. So the team pushed further. They fed it a script that had never been cracked. A language so old, most people had never heard its name. A language that had outlived every person who once spoke it. The AI went quiet for a moment. Then it began producing text. Real words. Real sentences. For the first time in human history, this language was speaking again. At first, the excitement in the room was easy to feel. This was a breakthrough. A door into the past had finally opened. But breakthroughs do not always bring comfort. Sometimes they bring questions. As the translations kept coming, one researcher noticed something strange. The sentences were not just historical records. They were not simple lists of trade or crops or kings. They were something else. Something that felt deliberate. Something that felt aimed at whoever might read it next. The lead researcher leaned closer to the screen. She read the passage twice. Then she asked the question that would follow this team for months to come. Why did this ancient civilization leave behind words that felt like a warning? If you value deep investigations like this, consider subscribing. To understand why this moment mattered, you need to understand how deep this mystery really went. Across the world, there are scripts that experts call undeciphered. This means nobody, not one scholar, not one historian, has ever proven what the symbols mean. Some of these scripts are thousands of years old. Some come from cultures we barely understand. A few belong to civilizations that vanished so completely. We do not even know what they called themselves. For over 100 years, teams of linguists tried to crack these languages by hand. They compared letters. They studied trade routes. They looked for a bilingual text, something written in two languages side by side, so they could use the known language to unlock the unknown one. Sometimes this worked. Most of the time, it did not. Some scripts stayed silent for generations. Symbols sat in museums like locked doors with no key in sight. Every attempt to translate them ended the same way, in failure. This particular script was one of the hardest. It predated many well-known writing systems. Some researchers believed it could even be older than early hieroglyphs. Its symbols did not match any known alphabet. Its structure did not follow patterns seen in nearby regions. It was, in every sense, a mystery wrapped in stone. When the AI was given access to fragments of this script, most experts expected slow, partial progress, maybe a few words, maybe a rough guess at grammar. Nobody expected fluency. But the machine did not stop at guessing single words. It began building full sentences. It connected symbols across different tablets, as if it could sense a hidden structure linking them all together. Symbols that once seemed random started forming a pattern only the AI could see. Researchers in the room began comparing notes. The translations were consistent. They were not random noise dressed up to look like language. This was real communication, preserved for thousands of years, waiting for the right kind of mind to unlock it. But as the translations grew longer, something odd emerged. The tone of the writing shifted. Early lines read like simple records. Counts of grain, names of places, ordinary life, frozen in time. Then, without warning, the language changed. The sentences became shorter, sharper, almost urgent, as if whoever wrote them had rushed to finish before it was too late. One researcher printed the passage and read it out loud, slowly, to make sure she was not imagining it. The room went quiet. On the screen, the AI's newest translation sat waiting to be read. The words did not describe crops. They did not list names of kings or measurements of grain. Instead, the sentence structure repeated itself, almost like a chant. Words appeared, disappeared, then returned in a different order, to a machine trained on patterns. This was strange, to a human trying to understand it. It felt deliberate. One of the linguists on the team had studied ancient ritual texts before. She recognized something familiar in the rhythm. Some ancient cultures used repeated phrasing for prayers. Others used it for warnings meant to be remembered by heart, passed down through generations who could not read. If that was true here, this was not just a historical record. It might have been meant to be memorized, spoken aloud, repeated by people who needed to remember it, long after the person who wrote it was gone. The AI kept working through the fragments. It noted that certain phrases appeared again and again across different tablets, found in different locations, sometimes hundreds of miles apart. This meant the message was not local. It had spread. Someone, or some group, made sure this message reached more than one place. That detail changed how the team thought about the discovery. This was not one person's private note. This was something meant to travel. Then the AI flagged something even stranger. Certain symbols in the text did not match any known meaning in the rest of the script. They did not appear in any of the earlier, simpler passages about daily life. These symbols only appeared here, in this urgent section, and nowhere else. The system offered a rough translation for these unknown symbols, based on context and pattern alone. It was not confident. It labeled its own answer as uncertain. But even an uncertain answer was enough to make the room go still. The rough meaning pointed to something being sealed, locked away, hidden from something, or someone, that was never named. Researchers stared at each other. Nobody wanted to say the obvious question out loud first. What were they trying to keep hidden? And why leave behind a message, repeated across many places, warning the future not to find it? The lead researcher finally spoke. She said one sentence that would guide the rest of this investigation. We need to know what they were protecting. To move forward, the team needed more data. They fed the AI every known fragment of this script, gathered from digs across different regions. Some fragments were tiny, barely a few symbols wide. Others were long, carved across entire slabs of stone. The AI was not just asked to translate anymore. It was asked to compare, to search for connections between fragments that human researchers had never linked together before. What it found surprised everyone. The fragments were not random pieces from unrelated sites. They formed a network, certain phrases repeated in a specific order, appearing in the same sequence, no matter where the fragment was found. This meant the message was not just spread out. It was organized, structured, deliberately copied and placed in multiple locations, almost like a signal meant to be found in more than one place at once. The AI mapped these locations onto a chart. When researchers looked at the map, the pattern became impossible to ignore. The sites formed a rough line, stretching across a region far larger than anyone expected for a single ancient culture. Some of these locations were previously thought to belong to unrelated groups, separated by hundreds of years and different beliefs. But the message connected them. One researcher, a specialist in ancient trade routes, pointed out something else. These sites were not just physically connected. They followed old paths once used by travelers and traders, long before modern roads existed. Whoever wrote this message may have known exactly how information moved across their world. They placed their words along the paths people already walked. This was not an accident. This was planning. The AI then noted something that made the room fall silent again. In each location, the message was carved facing the same direction. Not random placement, not simple decoration, a direction that, when checked against ancient star charts, lined up with a specific point in the night sky. Why would a message about hidden danger point toward the stars? Some researchers wanted to dismiss this as coincidence. Ancient people often aligned buildings and carvings with the sky for religious reasons. But the specialist who noticed the trade route connection was not so sure this was purely ceremonial. She began comparing the astronomical alignment with known ancient records of unusual sky events. Comets, meteor showers, anything unusual enough for an ancient civilization to remember and warn about, generation after generation. What she found next would change the direction of the entire investigation. If you value deep investigations like this, consider subscribing. The specialist pulled up records of ancient sky events from the same general time period as the tablets. She was looking for anything unusual. A comet, a meteor shower, a darkening of the sky that ancient people might have recorded. In their own way, as a sign of danger, she found something, not a perfect match, not proof, but a pattern of records from cultures across different parts of the world, describing something bright and strange appearing in the sky during roughly the same era the tablets were carved. Different cultures, with no contact with each other, described similar things. A light that did not move like a normal star. A brightness that lasted for days, then vanished. This alone was not new information. Historians already knew ancient people recorded unusual sky events. What was new was the possibility that this particular script, this hidden message spread across many sites, might be connected to that same event. The AI was given this new information and asked to run the translation again, this time searching for any connection between the unknown symbols and known words for sky, light, or fire found elsewhere in the script. The results came back with a translation the team did not expect. The rough meaning suggested the writers believed something had come from the sky, something that changed their world, and the sealed, hidden thing mentioned earlier in the message was connected to it. One-lined, translated with moderate confidence, stopped the room completely. It described something that fell, something that was buried, not because it was dangerous to touch, but because people were afraid of what would happen if it were found again. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The lead researcher read the line a second time, then a third, as if rereading it might change the words into something less unsettling. This changed everything about how the team viewed the discovery. This was no longer just an ancient language, waiting to be read for historical curiosity. This was a message meant to survive centuries, built to be repeated, built to be remembered, warning people not to search for something specific, something that, according to this ancient civilization, had fallen from the sky and been hidden ever since. The question was no longer just about language. It was about location. If this thing existed, and if these ancient people buried it on purpose, could it still be out there? And if so, what would happen if it were finally found? The team now faced a difficult decision. Should they try to find the location this ancient message pointed to? Or was this simply an old myth, dressed up in careful language, meant to explain something ancient people did not understand? Many researchers on the team leaned toward caution. Ancient civilizations often explained natural events using stories about the sky, about gods, about danger from above. A falling object could simply mean a meteorite, something ancient people did not understand. So they wrapped it in ritual language and warnings. But something about this case felt different. The message was not vague. It was not a single myth told by one group in one place. It had been copied, spread, and preserved across a wide network of sites, all pointing in the same direction, all aligned with the same part of the sky. This level of consistency was rare for a simple myth. Myths tend to change as they travel. Details shift. Names change. Stories grow. This message stayed the same everywhere it was found. The AI was asked to search for consistency across every translated fragment, checking word choice, phrasing, and structure. If this were an evolving myth, the language should have shifted slightly at each location. the way stories naturally change when passed from person to person. It had not. The wording remained nearly identical at every site. This suggested something important. This was not an oral story, passed down and slowly changed over time. This was a written message, copied precisely, meant to preserve one specific detail without distortion. Whoever created this message wanted the details to survive perfectly intact. That raised a difficult question. If this were only meant to explain a mysterious natural event, why would exact precision matter so much? Myths do not usually need precision. Instructions do. The specialist who first noticed the astronomical alignment offered a theory that unsettled the room. She suggested this was not a myth at all. It might have been a set of instructions, or a warning, meant to guide someone in the future back to a specific location, or to keep them away from it entirely. If she was right, this ancient civilization was not remembering a strange event in the sky. They were protecting something, and they wanted that protection to last far beyond their own lifetimes. The AI's next task was clear. Find the exact location this message pointed toward. If you value deep investigations like this, consider subscribing. Before the team could search for a location, a bigger problem appeared. The dates did not add up. Using standard dating methods, the tablets were placed at a certain point in history, but the astronomical alignment the AI identified, the specific point in the sky the message pointed toward, matched a different time period, not by a small margin, by centuries. This kind of gap usually means something simple: a mistake in translation, a misreading of the symbols, an error in matching the alignment to the wrong star pattern. Research teams see this often, and most of the time, a review clears up the confusion. So the team reviewed everything. They rechecked the dating of the stone itself. Using multiple independent methods, they rechecked the star alignment, using updated astronomical models that account for the slow shift of the Earth's position over long stretches of time. They rechecked the AI's translation, running it again from scratch, without telling the system what answer they expected. The results came back the same each time. The stone was carved during one era. The sky alignment pointed to another, earlier era entirely. This left only a few possible explanations. Either the dating methods were wrong, which seemed unlikely given how consistently they matched across several separate tests, or the astronomical alignment was symbolic, not literal, chosen for cultural meaning rather than a real event. Or, and this was the explanation nobody wanted to say out loud first, the people who carved this message were recording something that had happened long before their own time. A story passed down for generations, carried forward, and finally written down centuries after the event it described. If that were true, it meant whatever fell from the sky, whatever was buried and hidden, happened even earlier than anyone had assumed. It also meant this message survived, in some form, long enough to be remembered and eventually carved into stone by people who were not present when it happened. That is an extraordinary amount of time for a warning to survive, without being lost or changed. The lead researcher sat with this problem for a long time. If the timeline was correct, this was not a story about one civilization's fear. It was a warning passed down across multiple civilizations, across a stretch of time longer than most written history itself, which raised the hardest question yet. If this warning survived that long, carried carefully from one generation to the next, what could possibly be worth remembering for that long? With the timeline unresolved, the team turned back to the AI and asked it to finish translating the remaining fragments, the ones describing the exact location the message pointed toward. This is where the investigation took its strangest turn. The AI processed the remaining symbols normally, the same way it had for every other section. But when it reached a specific cluster of characters near the end of the message, its output changed. Instead of producing a confident translation, the system flagged the passage as low confidence. Repeatedly, even after researchers adjusted its settings and tried different versions of the text. At first, this seemed like a technical limit. Some symbols were worn down by time, harder to read clearly. Damage to the stone could easily explain gaps in translation. But the specialist team noted something odd. The surrounding symbols, the ones just before and after this section, were some of the clearest carvings in the entire tablet. Sharp edges, easy to read, not worn down at all. This meant the difficulty was not physical damage. The AI understood the symbols. It simply could not settle on a confident meaning for what they were saying. Or perhaps, researchers wondered privately, it was giving multiple wildly different interpretations that contradicted each other so completely that no single answer could be trusted. They tried one more time, feeding the AI extra context from everything already translated, hoping the added detail might resolve the confusion. The system returned several possible readings, none of which matched cleanly. One version suggested a location description. Another suggested a set of conditions, as if instructing that this section should only be understood under specific circumstances. A third reading, the one the researchers found hardest to dismiss, suggested the passage was not meant to be understood by everyone, only by someone, or something, capable of proving they should be allowed to know. Whether that was a poetic flourish from an ancient culture, or something else entirely, no one on the team could say for certain. As of today, this final section remains only partially translated. The AI continues to run in the background, testing new approaches. The team has not released the exact coordinates the earlier alignment suggested, citing the need for further verification before anyone attempts to search the site described. What we do know is this: an ancient civilization built a message strong enough to survive thousands of years, precise enough to remain unchanged across many locations, and careful enough to hide its most important detail behind a wall even a modern machine cannot fully break through. Some messages are built to be found. This one may have been built to make sure the last part is only found by whoever is meant to find it. And until that happens, the machine keeps reading, and the stone keeps its final secret.